Coming up next on Being Well, Ed and Jeff Pierce from Pierce Funeral Home in Marshall return for another interesting discussion about death and the questions we all have but don't want to ask or don't know how to ask. This time we'll learn more about cemetery plots, headstones, wills, prearrangement, and a lot more. Don't go away, Being Well starts right now. Production of Being Well is made possible in part by Sarah Bush Lincoln Health System, supporting healthy lifestyles, eating a heart-healthy diet, staying active, managing stress, and regular checkups are ways of reducing your health risks. Proper health is important to all at Sarah Bush Lincoln Health System. Information available at sarahbush.org. Additional funding by Jazzercise of Charleston. Well, I'm so pleased to have Ed and Jeff Pierce back on Being Well. Our other show, we talked a lot about death and dying and the details of death. We're going to continue our conversation because we didn't have time to get through everything. Let's talk a little bit about prearrangement, and if that's a route someone needs to go, what do people need to do if that's what they want to do?
For prearrangements, people will contact us. We'll sit down and discuss with them what they want to have done following their death. And as I mentioned in the previous show, I think it needs to be a family thing where they discuss with their family about what their intentions are and to see how that will work for the family. I think that prearrangement is a very, very good idea because it takes a lot of the pressure off of the family at the time, and it gives them more of an opportunity to make their decisions in more of a relaxed atmosphere.
Yeah. So if you do a prearrangement, my mother has done this and she has an account and it's paid for. What if you decide, what if that funeral home goes out of business, or you decide, I don't want to use that funeral home? Where does that money go?
Okay. That is, yes.
Okay.
What, the thing you want to ask about when you make prearrangements is that you want to make sure that what you're selecting, the fees that you're being charged and the merchandise and the different aspects of the funeral service, that you will not be requested to add more funds to at time of need. It's a misconception when a lot of funeral homes or salespeople who represent some funeral homes guarantee the family that the price is not going to go up. Everything goes up. What is done is that the funds is put into a trust, and that trust pays interest. And the funeral home is entitled to keep that interest as a hedge against inflation.
Okay.
Another thing that you mentioned that you need to check out is that if for any reason, if that funeral home will go out of business, you want to make sure that those funds are transferable to any funeral home. The prearrangement program that we use also stipulates that if for some reason that family decides that they do not want to use our funeral home at time of need, even though they have given us the funds, that those funds will be refundable and can be used at any funeral home.
Okay.
And legally they can be.
Okay. Jeff,
I mean, and that's whether the funeral home that they make the prearrangement at has gone out of business, or let's say they make their prearrangements and then move to California and they've been there 30 years before something happens. Well, at that point, then all their friends are really out there. So then with the prearrangement being able to be transferred, then the funeral home in California can simply do all the paperwork and send it into the insurance or the trust company and receive the funds.
Okay. Well, let's talk about cremation. Someone had asked the question, how is it done? And is it one body at a time is cremated? Can you kind of walk us through the process, Jeff?
Yes, in Illinois, all cremations are cleared by the coroner's office, just in case like somebody would have been murdered, then we would have to clear it and say that it's okay to do the cremation. and don't want to have somebody pop up a couple days later and say, oh yeah, so-and-so poisoned them, you know.
Yeah.
Because once you do a cremation, you do destroy, and I hate to refer to bodies as this, but the biggest piece of evidence that we would have in a death investigation. So all cremations in Illinois are cleared through the coroner's office of the county in which the death occurs before cremation can take place. And then once the cremation is cleared through the coroner's office, then the cremations are done one at a time. The funeral home that the family is using will work with their crematory, whatever one they use, or if they have one themselves. The bodies are signed in the crematory, they're assigned a number, they're tracked all the way through the process, and then afterwards they're signed back out of the crematory. So that's how everybody's kept not only identified, but then you can be assured that you are getting back, you know, your actual loved one.
Remains. Well,
yeah.
that is something. How would you know?
Exactly.
You just have to trust
but yeah,
them.
they're signed in, assigned a number. There's a little metal tag with the number on it that accompanies the body through the cremation, and then it's put in with the ashes or attached to the bag that the ashes are in, that's in the temporary urn that the funeral home receives back. And then there's paperwork documented all the way through, and the crematories are inspected by the state and checked out.
I have a question, and I saw this on a TV show where some crematoriums let the family be there as sort of like to see the body one last time. Is that a common practice, or is that something that's becoming more common?
It's not a common practice, but if people want to do that, if they want to go and be there when the remains is placed in the crematory, they're allowed to do so. And we've had some situations where the family has gone to the crematory and they've pressed the button to start
Really?
the cremation. Some religions really promote that also. In our area, but most of the families do not wish to go to the crematory.
Okay.
But they have that opportunity if they want.
Okay. Let's move into another topic, and that's wills. I know you're not attorneys, but what do you do if someone, if you're dealing with someone that doesn't have a will? Because a lot of people, a lot of younger people my age think, oh, I don't need a will. What are your thoughts on wills?
Okay. I believe that everybody should have a will. And the will needs to be done correctly. In our particular family, I had a brother who died at 34 and his wife died at 32. I do not remember whether they had a will or not, but a will is a very, very necessary thing to have, especially if you have a family. It can also save a lot of confusion for the family after a death on what to be done. If you do not have a will, the state of Illinois, or most states, will tell your family how things are going to be divided.
With money and assets
With
and things
money
like
and
that.
assets. Another important thing that I feel about a will is that if you do a will, contact a reputable attorney and have it done right. I have seen this so many times where people get these wills from an ad in a magazine, and they do not.
They're not legally binding.
They can be binding, but it's just a total disaster for the family. So you're better off to spend a little bit of money and have it done right and save a lot of headaches down the road.
Because in a will, if you can stipulate who gets your assets, but does the will also include your final wishes for your funeral and how you want that done? Is that common that that's in the will?
Most people do not, but that can be done.
Okay. And it's all in one document and everything.
It's all one document.
Okay.
You can have it done that way.
Okay. Well, let's move on to the next part. And once the funeral's done, I should ask, if you're going to bury somebody and you are not affiliated with a Catholic church, you don't have a cemetery plot, what do you do?
Well, there's various cemeteries, all over every county, and the best thing to do would be to work with the funeral directors at the funeral home that you select, and they can help you along the way with cemetery plots. And now we personally don't handle cemetery plots, but we know all the people that are on the boards at the cemeteries and people who open and close the graves, and we can get you in to meet with the right people to get a cemetery plot and help you with pricing and all that.
Okay, so that leads to my next question, and that's the whole question of headstones. And I know that's something that you help people with in that process, because that comes a little bit later on. That's not something that you have to decide in the funeral arrangements. That can come a little bit later?
Yes.
Yes.
That does not have to be done right then.
Okay, so how do you deal with, do you put, if it's a husband and wife, the husband passed away, the wife hasn't. Do you put her name on there? What are some of the things that people should think about in terms of the headstone?
It all depends on the situation, and that's not a good answer. Most of the time, if people's been married for years and years and years, they'll go ahead and they'll get a double monument. And nothing stays the same, and especially if it's a young person that loses a spouse. If they ask me, now sometimes they do not ask, I sort of suggest that they get like a single monument, because things change, people remarry, people relocate, and like I said before, nothing stays the same. And but if somebody actually really wants to go ahead and get a double monument, and let's say if that person does remarry, even if they weren't to be interred there, that date and all could still be placed on that monument.
I never thought of that.
They can do that.
That's a good idea. What are some other things people should think about when picking out that headstone? A lot of choices out there and things to pick from.
Yeah, there's a lot more choices than actually people realize, even just color-wise. Most people, when they think monument, they think gray, sort of a rounded top, sort of square, but there's gray, there's 4 shades of blue, there's 4 or 5 shades of red, I think 5 shades of black, a brown, a couple of shades of green. There's all kinds just color-wise, and then you're not even getting into the shape and style of the monument. And pretty much with the monument and the granites and the processes they have now, if you can think it up, they can do it. So they've got laser engraving now, that the detail of the laser engraving is just unbelievable.
And I know, maybe, I'm not sure if it's there are some cemeteries where all the headstones are flat.
Yes, there are some cemeteries, and then also some sections in some cemeteries where they require the flat headstone.
Okay. So
So that's another thing you need to check out with the cemetery. If you're in a certain section. Now, if you're out there for the burial and you happen to glance around, you can pretty well see and get a feeling for it. But it's always good to double check. And most monument dealers, when they go to place a monument, when you're making I don't want to say making arrangements, but when you're designing your headstone, and you say we're at this cemetery in this section, they'll know whether it's where they require the flat grass marker or you can put a regular stone in.
Now, I grew up in Minnesota, and if someone passes away in the winter in Minnesota, it's pretty hard to bury somebody because the ground is so frozen. Here in Illinois, can burials take place year-round?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that was a question I had. All right, so let's finish the show today by talking about funerals. We know there's a process to them, but they're a memorial and they're sort of a closure for the family. Can you talk a little bit about what that sort of does in the healing process for people?
I think that having visitation and a funeral service is a very, very, very important thing to do. And it doesn't make any difference whether you're having burial or cremation. You still have the opportunity to have a service ahead of time. I think that the funeral ceremonies themselves have changed a great deal in the last 25 years or so. They're a lot more personal now. You have more friends getting up to speak at the funeral service. We have the videos that we show that shows the life of the person, picture boards, different things such as that. The burial vault company that we use, we have we're able to have balloon releases at the cemetery, and we can also have champagne toast at the cemetery. They'll do whatever you want to do. And I have found that funeral service has really progressed for the betterment in the last several years, because it's much more of a personal thing than what it was 30 years ago.
Yeah, I've talked to different people who said, you know, they need the casket there and to see the body for closure. How do you think that works or helps people?
I think it helps them accept the reality of the death a lot more than if they don't. It's just like if you had a loved one that just disappeared and you never see him again. It's not the same as if you're able to see him. And we've had so many families, and we've had several families with the first death, they've had direct cremation with no viewing and all. And when the spouse has died with the second death, most of the families that we've served have come back and said, hey, we need to have something beforehand. If we had to do this all over again, we would have had a viewing and a service. But there are some people that just do not need that, and so they shouldn't be pressured into it. But we as professionals, I believe we need to explain to people and give them those opportunities.
So are people, it used to be, I grew up Catholic, so you had the visitation the night before and the Catholic funeral service the next day. Can you just, if you don't go to church, do a lot of people just have the service at the funeral home? Do they call that a memorial service or a visitation, and take care of it?
Most of our funeral services are at the funeral home.
Okay.
They're not at a church. I've always had a feeling that if somebody's been real active in the church, I think that's the place to have it. But some people just prefer not to have it at the funeral home. And with the way funeral homes are now, with so much more space and all that, I feel that a lot of families would just soon have it at the funeral home. In our own family, my parents were very, very active in the church. We had the visitation at the funeral home, but we had the funeral service at the church, because that would have meant a great deal to them.
So what about do people do a graveside service as well?
Oh yeah, after the funeral service, we will leave to go to the cemetery. We'll take a procession to the cemetery and have the committal service right then. And with many of our families, if the person who passed away was a veteran, we'll have military graveside rites. In this area here, most of the communities have like a Legion or the VFW, and they provide those rights.
Okay, so I should ask, if the person who passed away is a veteran, do you as the family member have to call the VFW, or is that something that
usually the funeral home will do it for you. They'll contact the local VFW or American Legion to do it. And these guys, they do such a nice service, they really do. And these are people who have served in the military themselves, and it's really a very, very good service, because service that they're providing is, most of the time they know the veteran passed away, and the service that they're providing really comes from their heart. And it's really a tremendous thing to see.
Okay. As we're wrapping up here, let's just talk a little bit about the grief process. You're seeing people at the very beginning of the process, and there's a lot of planning, and there's a lot of things going on, and a lot of activity, and then all of a sudden that's done. What do you tell people to kind of help them transition into that next phase now that the funeral's done and the headstone's finished, that the planning part is done?
We use a family follow-up service for families,
Okay.
and we have a series of booklets that we mail out during the year to most families, or we have information there at the funeral home. A lot of people depend on their local clergyman to help them with that, and the friendship of others. And we also have, for people who have lost a child, no matter if they're 40 years old or 2 years old, we have a group in our community, and it's in a lot of communities, called Compassionate Friends.
Compassionate Friends, yeah.
And it's a tremendous organization where these people get together and they talk about it, because that is something that you cannot read from a book to tell you how to feel, because unless you've ever gone through it by losing a child, you have no idea. So if I tell a family, I know how you feel, I don't know how they feel at all.
And
Because fortunately, I've never been through it.
Right, and everyone's process is different. It's
Yes.
not like a step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you're done.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of our local hospitals have grief share groups and communities. So there's resources.
Hospice is real good with it too.
Okay. All right, gentlemen, is there anything else we needed to address before we wrap up today?
Can't really think of anything.
right.
Really appreciate the opportunity to come speak with
Well,
you.
thank you for coming back to Being Well. We say we cover health topics from all stages of life, and this is the final stage. And I think you've answered a lot of questions that people have always wondered about, but just didn't know how to ask.
Yeah.
So thank you for coming on and sharing information with us.
Thanks for having us
Thank you.
back.
You have ovarian cancer. Those are words that are tough to hear, but according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, more than 20,000 women in the U.S. hear that diagnosis each year. Most of them are over age 60, but the woman you're about to meet was diagnosed very young, in her 30s. This is her story, one of inspiration and triumph.
In 2004, Cynthia Weiss' doctor told her something no one wants to hear.
It's tested positive. Nothing made sense.
Ovarian cancer.
It really wasn't the cancer diagnosis that caught me. It was the moment after he said, you have stage 4 ovarian cancer and you need an immediate hysterectomy, radiation, and chemotherapy. And I just went, So I don't have kids yet. I'm not married, and I've always wanted to be a mom.
Cindy endured the treatment and was cancer-free for almost 2 years. Then Cindy says she just didn't feel right. The cancer had come back.
Ovarian cancer has been called the silent killer, and the reason for that is the initial symptoms, if you will, may be very vague and nonspecific.
Dr. Matthew Robertson says since symptoms can be vague, abdominal bloating, maybe a stomach ache, some women figure it could be something else, so they don't get diagnosed until the cancer spread. But the good news is that treatment keeps getting better.
We're learning more and more about what genetic aberrations, what faults drive the progression of cancer and lead to recurrences. The more we learn, we're identifying new targets which we can hopefully develop drugs to attach and continue to improve survival rates.
It's been 5 years since Cindy's second diagnosis.
It's a great milestone.
And sure, she thinks about it.
Yeah, it happened once and it came back again. Will it come back a third time?
But now Cindy's cancer-free, and her main focus is on life. A year after her second diagnosis, Cindy married her longtime beau, David. And shortly after that, they adopted Charlotte.
But I have my husband, I have my daughter, I have my family.
For Mayo Clinic News Network, I'm Vivian Williams.
A new report suggests many states are lacking effective strategies to curb prescription drug abuse. This, despite the fact that prescription drug misuse is now responsible for more deaths than heroin and cocaine combined. The study released by Trust for America's Health evaluated each state on several strategies that have shown promise in fighting against prescription drug abuse. Those include prescription drug monitoring programs and laws that require special education for medical providers who prescribe painkillers. The study found that many states simply don't have these programs in place. Sleep. We all need it. Few of us get enough. Some non-sleepers turn to medications, but recently many of those who are sleep deprived are using sleep apps on their smartphones to help them get some extra Z's.
It's a crazy world we live in. Go, go, go. But when it comes to going to bed, a lot of us are so stressed we just can't get any shut-eye. There are plenty of medications that claim they can help people sleep, but some drugs have side effects, so a lot of folks choose to toss and turn until they doze off. Introducing sleep apps, applications you can download on your smartphone or tablets. From using soothing sounds that help you relax to tracking your sleep patterns, these apps claim they can help you get a better night's sleep.
The fact that people are starting to recognize the importance of sleep is the bonus.
But do they really help when it comes to your health?
They're not going to really diagnose anything, and they're certainly not going to treat a patient with any type of sleep disorder.
Recently, the Food and Drug Administration announced they will begin monitoring health apps to make sure they are safe and do what they claim. Doctors say even if these programs do cause you to become drowsy, chances are those who download them are having sleep problems that may need to be treated by a physician, because many sleep issues, such as sleep apnea, can lead to serious problems.
If the person's having an issue with their sleep, that may be one of the reasons that they downloaded the app in the first place. And if that is the case, certainly seeking medical advice and potentially testing could be beneficial.
For today's Health Minute, I'm Carl Azus.
Production of Being Well is made possible in part by Sarah Bush Lincoln Health System, supporting healthy lifestyles, eating a heart-healthy diet, staying active, managing stress, and regular checkups are ways of reducing your health risks. Proper health is important to all at Sarah Bush Lincoln Health System. Information available at sarahbush.org. Additional funding by Jazzercise of Charleston.